What a lovely day to bake. My name is Arne, German hobby baker who's living in Luxembourg. Today I'll show you how to make this beautiful brioche bread with raisin. This video is a good example of when working with sourdough, you should be flexible enough to adopt, for example, your timing whenever the dough doesn't rise so much. In this video, I had such an issue with my sourdough and I put the loaf into my fridge and baked it the other day. And the result is really amazing. So check out my process. This is from Luxembourg with loaf. The evening before we start baking, we create our stiff starter, and therefore we take 50 grams of water and 100 grams of flour, and I'm using here already a stiff starter, but you can also use your regular sourdough. Mix everything together with a spoon. At one stage it gets a little bit complicated with the spoon, so take out the starter and knead the rest by hand. If you want to boost your starter activity, you can already integrate a little bit of sugar as well as a little bit of butter. Then this gets already a little bit familiar with the environment the dough will have later on. The next day it already looks quite good. The kitchen was a little bit cold, that's why the fermentation didn't went well that nice. 30 minutes before we bake, we start also soaking our raisins with 100 grams of juice, 150 grams of raisins, and then we take a spoon and try to cover all the raisins with the juice. For the main dough we need 800 grams of flour. We have our stiff starter, which really smells yogurty, really pleasant. Then we have 4 medium-sized eggs, as well as 80 grams of sugar. We need 250 grams of butter. That's quite a lot, I know, but it's a brioche dough. 400 grams of milk, 10 grams of salt. Then we have our soaked raisins. So let's get everything in a mixing bowl, and we start with adding the milk, then we add the flour, add our stiff starter, then add the 4 eggs, as well as the sugar, and then we can start the mixer at low speed. After 10 minutes it should look like this, and then it's time to add the butter. We add the butter in small portions, so not everything at once. Then wait around 2 minutes until the butter is incorporated before we add the next chunk of butter. And now it's time to add the remaining butter. So we have kneaded the dough for currently 16 minutes, and it's time to add the salt as well as the raisins. I have squeezed the raisins a bit to get rid of the juice, because else the dough would be too much hydrated. So full speed, 2 minutes until the raisins are incorporated into the dough. Smell is really amazing at that stage. To check if the dough is ready, we do a window pane test. Therefore, wetten your hands and then try to stretch out the dough to a very, very thin dough. And then if it doesn't break, the dough is ready. So I'm transferring the dough to my countertop. I have slightly floured it and then give it some stretches and round the dough. And then we transfer it into a greased plastic container. You can use some sunflower oil or whatever you have there. Should be a natural oil. Cover it and wait for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, we start with doing coil folds. So wet your hands, pull the dough up and move it over, rotate the plastic container and do the same thing again, and then a third time. Cover it again, and then we wait for 30 minutes again and do exactly the same thing. We are doing that in total 4 times, and this will actually develop even more gluten network for our dough. As you see here, the dough is non-sticky at all at this stage. And then we're doing it a last time. After that, the dough will rest for 4 hours. Then it's time to pre-shape the dough. The volume should already have been increased a little bit. I'm taking here my kitchen scale and tare it in order to figure out what is half of the dough. Of course, you can also measure it just by looking at the dough. Then I take a dough scraper and I form round balls of the dough. Or you can also use your hands. Bring everything together, and then they will rest for 30 minutes uncovered on your countertop. After 30 minutes, it's time for the shaping. So pull the dough upside down and then take your hands and press it together to seam the edges, and then simply roll them up. Very easy shaping technique. And then transfer them into loaf pans. I've also oiled them a little bit. And then we do the same with the second dough. So bring the edges together and then roll them up. Place them in the loaf pan, close the lid, and then wait for 2 hours. I've waited for 2 hours, even for 3 and 4. The fermentation didn't started to kick in. So I said, let's be spontaneous and put them in the fridge. The next morning I didn't have time to bake them, so I decided to let them in the fridge until the evening. And I had already started my oven, took them out 30 minutes before baking so they could get to some temperature. I had already preheated the oven to 230 degrees Celsius, that's 446 degrees Fahrenheit. And before baking, it's important to give them an egg wash to get a nicer color. Egg wash is basically an egg with a little bit of milk We bake them with steam for 10 minutes at 230 degrees Celsius. That's 464 degrees Fahrenheit. And then we relieve the steam and bake them for another 55 minutes at 180 degrees Celsius. That's 356 degrees Fahrenheit. And then it's time to get them out of the oven and let them cool. And don't they look awesome? They have really risen quite a lot in the oven. To get them out of the loaf pan, I just slap the loaf pan to my countertop, and then I transfer them on a cooling rig. And then it's time to give them a brush with hot or warm butter. So after letting them cool down, it's time to cut the brioche. Let's see what we have inside. Wow, look at this nice crumb. It looks super nice. It's airy, fluffy, and yeah, you see that here also when I squeeze the bread, jumps back into its form. Super nice. So enjoy some impressions, have fun when you bake that. That bread keeps fresh for at least 5 days. Enjoy. Bon appetit. I hope you enjoyed this video and you have learned something. Always if I try to stick to the process and then something doesn't work out, I'm pretty disappointed at the end with the result. So this time I thought, okay, let's be flexible enough. And I mean, the result is really, really nice. I was a little bit scared at first that this will bring too much sourness into the bread, but overall it's a very fine balanced brioche bread, super airy, it's easy to enjoy. It's a perfect bread for breakfast. So if you want to support me and my channel, please like this video, subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss my next videos. Thanks. When was the last time you had to be flexible and maybe also change the fermentation times because your starter got stuck? Write me a comment below the video. I would love to read your stories. Have a great day. Adieu and goodbye.